Great job, Ben. I should probably take them off. Over the years, I have had some downright disastrous hairstyles. From having my head shaven up to the scalp, to filling my head with hair gel because I thought it looked good. In this video, I'll be explaining my thought processes and my mistakes, so hopefully you never have to do the same. Let us begin. It's quite nice. When I was younger, when I was a kid, I didn't think that hair or hairstyles mattered whatsoever. I was naive. I often thought when I was younger that me being nice and quite loud and sociable was going to be enough to enable me to attract girls that I wanted. Now, as I've explained in previous videos in this series, that just didn't happen. I had some hilarious haircuts when I was a kid, proper 90s style with a big mop top. You'll notice that my face still looks exactly the same from when I was a kid. I don't know what my mum was thinking. Maybe those hairstyles were in at the time. I dread to think. Either way, it didn't look good. I first started becoming aware of hairstyles mainly when I used to just see other kids at school doing stuff with their hair. Generally the kids that were quite popular, because that was always the thing when I was at school. It always seemed to be important to try and be popular at school. So I started putting some like gel in my hair and ended up with the super cringe haircut for a couple of years at least. The one where your hair is completely flat apart from the very front, which is then lifted up with some spiky hair gel. It's essentially the same haircut that guy with In-Betweeners had. The one where it looks like you've walked into a door and then your hair's just splattered upwards. And it was a terrible hairstyle to have because from the back and sides it looked really weird because only the very front of your hair had any sort of height in it. And when you're using a product like hair gel, you're only going to get one result, and that's spiky, crispy, weird hair that definitely doesn't look natural. At one point, I think I finally realised it wasn't the best product. I started to not like the look and the feel of my hair, so I knew I had to change it to something else. So like loads of guys, I started to attempt to just try and use water because I found that sometimes after I went swimming that my hair would stand up in place for at least a little bit of time, and when it dried out it didn't end up being super crispy like with the gel, so I thought maybe that's the thing to do. And all this left me with was a hairstyle that kind of flopped down to the front because it had no structure and it had no hold. And at this time my hair was also the same length on the sides and the back as it was on top, which if you've watched my videos for a while you'll know is a haircut that doesn't really benefit a lot of people's heads, and it certainly didn't benefit mine because I'm not someone with like a godlike jawline to begin with. My face isn't very structured, and then when you've got a hairstyle that is even more rounded as well, doesn't give the best results. And I also remember the hair at the very back of my neck, below the regular hairline, I used to let the hair just creep down towards my shoulders. Looking back at it now, it just looked unkempt and unclean. These days, I can't stand anything back there. Eventually, I moved on to my first non-gel products. And at the time, in all truth, there wasn't actually that many products available. These days, you go into a drugstore and us guys, we've got lots of choices. But back then, there was only the basic few. And I just wanted ones that left my hair feeling soft rather than crispy, so I went for two of the Old Faithfuls. The first one was just some really cheap greasy wax, and then the second one was Brill Cream, which is a product that I revisited about a year ago on the channel. And in retrospect, compared to the types of products that I use and recommend now on this channel, they are terrible. Because yes, it got rid of the weird crispiness in my hair, and I had the confidence to try and make some slightly different hairstyles, but the big issue with them is it left my hair soft but super greasy. It looked like I'd taken a trip to the local chip shop and dunked my head in the fryer. It was so oily, and especially when certain lights were on it, it looked so shiny, and it made my hair look like it was just completely clogged up with product, even when I'd only used a tiny amount. My biggest problem with all of these products really was the hold factor, because they never used to last more than a couple of hours, and then it always left me fiddling with my hair constantly. I would apply the product in the morning without any pre-styling, by the way. I'd just chuck it straight into my hair normally after a shower, and then I'd get on with my day, and within a few hours I'd look in the mirror, my hair was just coming down across my face. It never did this, it never went up and stayed up because the stuff, it was just too weak. There wasn't any really good options, to be honest, or at least I hadn't found the options back then. I remember hating this, especially on nights out and stuff, because we go out on these nights out clubbing, and in those hotter and sweatier environments, the hair would just fall down instantly, and it's really annoying to keep having to put your hair up, to keep having to go to the toilet to check if it's still up. It's just something that you shouldn't have to really worry about. And also, all these hairstyles, they were pretty flat. There wasn't really any volume in any of these, which wasn't the best. It meant that it didn't, you know, contribute towards my facial structure. I needed a change, I needed a lift, and I discovered pre-styling. So if you don't follow that many of my hairstyling videos, essentially pre-styling is when you apply product before using a hairdryer, and this can contribute to much increased volume and also ease of styling. And this was great. This was like a revolution to me, because loads of my friends, they didn't even know about this thing. I used mousses in particular for years. I had tried mousses without a hairdryer before, but I'd always hated them because the final result had always turned out like a gel, so it would always dry and leave me with really crispy bits in my hair. However, somehow, I don't remember how, it may have been through watching a YouTube video or something, or it could have just been by following instructions on the back of one of these products, I discovered the use of a hairdryer, and that by applying some heat to the mousse, it would make my hair go crazy. And I thought, you know, this must be what some of these other guys have been using for so long, because they were turning up to school and college with these super lifted, quiffed hairstyles, and I couldn't even get mine to go up a centimetre. So I started rocking super volumized hairstyles. It kind of gave me the opposite problem that I had before, because my hair was kind of going a bit out of control, and I was so bothered about getting my hair lifted, I was just focusing on getting the entire head of hair upwards, even if it looked weird from different angles. So I'd have both sides, the front and the back, all going up, and then it made my hair look really strange. There was no distinct parting, it just looked like someone had dropped a wig on top of my head. And you may have noticed from some of the photos that are probably jumping on screen now, I made another crucial error at this stage to do with the sideburns, because I didn't have any. This is one of the mistakes, right, that I don't even have an excuse for. I don't even have a cover story, because I don't think anyone else was really doing this. Maybe this was just something I saw my dad do and I decided to copy. God knows. But either way, every time I went to the barbers, I made sure he cut that off. And that was a terrible decision. When you chop off your sideburns, basically it makes your head look really round, and it stops your hair from being used to frame your face well. And this made my head look quite strange from the side, and it's something that I wouldn't recommend to anyone out there at all. From that point onwards, I staggered through with the same hairstyle for quite a while, until I reached a period when I decided it was a good idea to start dyeing my hair. The reason being is, even still to this day probably, I'm not the biggest fan of my hair colour. Because I'm pretty pale, I've got quite dark hair, but it's not quite black. It just leaves me with skin that looks even paler, and back then, I hated it. And there were other guys experimenting with dyeing their hair at the same time. So I started using this like spray on kind of bleach stuff to try and raise my hair to more of a blonde colour, because that's what I had when I was younger, and it's what always seemed to look better with my skin anyway. So I started using that stuff, and in terms of the intended result, it worked alright. My hair definitely went more towards the blonde side, not necessarily in the most healthy of ways, but I remember doing that at least for a couple of years. And then at some point I figured out how to properly use a hairbrush, which was quite a lifesaver, because before then I'd been relying on my hands really to try and do the work with the hairdryer, which is not only great for scorching your fingers off, but it's also quite difficult to really be accurate when you're styling. With a brush, you see, you can cover one line of an area quite easily, and that allowed me to kind of get more consistent results from my hair. I remember one time though at uni, things seemed to be going quite well, and then I went to a barber that wasn't my usual barber. My mates decided to go in there because it was slightly cheaper than the place that we used to go. It was like a couple of pounds cheaper. And I thought, you know what? What's the worst that can happen? Let's go in. And this guy who cut my hair was an absolute idiot. I told him very precisely what I wanted, even showed him a picture, and he still managed to screw it up. He shaved all the way up to about here maybe from this side with clippers at grade 1. So from most angles I look bald, which definitely didn't suit me. When you find a barber that's at least half decent, it's probably worth sticking with him, unless you want to look like an idiot for about 2 months with a ruined haircut. And then finally, towards the end of university, I decided I wanted to change the position of my parting a bit. I explained that one in a video I did a while back about how to make your face more symmetrical, because the parting side that it was originally on kind of contributed to my face bending and like having a bit of curvature to one side. And I found that when I switched it, I just trialed it randomly one day to see what it would look like, and it seemed to look better. And I realized it was kind of because the hair direction was going against the natural curvature of my face slightly, so it kind of made my face look a bit more in proportion. So I had that one at first, got it neatened up, started to take it a little bit shorter on the sides, and I've really kept with that one since. The only thing I've really had to combat slightly more recently is just a bit of hair loss and a bit of recession. Not massively, it's not at the stage where I feel like I want to shave my head realistically. I always get tempted to, just to see what it would look like, but for the types of content I do on here, it ain't worth it. But just in a couple of areas, it's a bit tricky, and I've been experimenting with the height of my parting to try and see what looks the best. And you're glad to know that when my hair does, grow a bit longer, the sideburns are still there these days. It's an interesting thing to talk about because hairstyles in general, it's amazing how much they can actually affect the way that you look. It's not something that you should be super worried about like I used to be, but it is something to just bear in mind. Let me know in the comments section what's the worst hairstyle you've ever tried, and which one of the ones that I've seen in today's video do you think's the worst. And is my one now an improvement on that? Hopefully. Big thanks to everyone as well for supporting my latest video. Really surprised that the response to that one is awesome. And that's my hair story. What's yours?